I was with some friends last week when the Israeli strikes on Iran began, and you probably all know, but some months ago the Israeli Air Force took out most of the ground-to-air missile defenses that the Iranians had put in place. The Iranian Revolutionary Government, I should stress, is different from Iran. The Revolutionary Government's air defense system would almost completely be taken out. When the Israelis first went in, some 10 days ago or so now, they had such an extraordinary set of successes in their strikes against the leadership. Almost all of the military leadership of Iran, apart from the Ayatollah, were taken out. A vast number of the nuclear sites were hit. Around half, it seems, of the ballistic missiles in the armory of the mullahs was taken out. And a few days in, I said to a friend of mine who's a historian who's visited this place many times, I said, "What do you think this war will be called?" And he said, "At the rate the Israelis are going at, it might be the 5-day war." I like the idea they're just getting better and better at it. You know, you have a 6-day war, a 5-day war. Hopefully we'll never have to have a 4-day one. But it was startling to me that for many reasons, but one of them then, of course, was that President Trump fulfilled his promise to the American electorate, which many American presidents have said, but he followed up on, which was that under no circumstances could the world's most dangerous regime have ownership of the world's most dangerous weapons. And but I would just add that there's one part of that quite often people outside of the region don't understand, which is it's not just that the revolutionary government in Iran would have control of the world's most dangerous weaponry. It's the fact that if they did, we would see the kind of nuclear proliferation which we have feared since 1945. The world's most dangerous region would have control of the world's most dangerous weapons. Everybody in the region, the Saudis, the Bahrainis, everybody would either create their own nuclear capabilities or would be effectively buying nukes off the shelf, which sadly you could do in such a situation. Some people say, well, the kind of nuclear deterrence that President Nixon and others understood would be completely passé. What would happen if the Middle East was nuked up to the hilt would be effectively a Mexican gunfight, where the whole of the region and the wider world would be at risk of just one of those tripwires being crossed at any moment. And nobody outside of the region thinks that's a good idea, and President Trump has acted on it. But it's very striking, just two things quickly. One, look at the number of countries around the world which also said for decades that the mullahs could not have nuclear weapons. And what did they do about it? Nothing. The presidents of France, the presidents of Germany, the prime ministers of Britain, they all say they can't have the bomb. But other than saying that's why we must go around the nuclear negotiating table again and get strung out for another 10 years by the Ayatollahs, they were never going to do a thing about it. The most striking comment of the last week, in a way, was Chancellor Merz of Germany, who said in front of the German media, he said, the Israelis have just done our dirty work for us. What an extraordinary thing to say. But he was completely right. So it's a slightly long-winded way to answer the question, but let me just answer that very quickly. The question will be for historians, will what we're living through at the moment, what will it be called? What will the name of this war be called? It might be the war of 1979 to 2025. It might have been that when the Ayatollah Khomeini was allowed to fly back from Paris to Tehran in 1979 and then spread terrorism across the Middle East, maybe that's about to come to an end. Maybe it'll be known as the post-October the 7th war, because I think it's something I write about a lot in this book, but just consider the fact that when Iran's proxy of Hamas decided to did invade Israel on the 7th of October, hoped that their fellow Iranian proxy of Hezbollah would join in. Just consider the fact that what Yahya Sinwar did that day led not just to his own demise and the near destruction of Hamas, but the almost complete destruction of Hezbollah, which has been throttling Lebanon for decades, and now leads to the fact that the Ayatollah Khomeini has very few friends left. There was a left-wing Labour leader in the UK called Jeremy Corbyn some years ago, who I was not a fan of. And he became notorious because, among other things, he had been, in the 1990s, 2000s, he had laid a wreath on the grave of the Munich Olympic terrorists. Can you imagine? Anyway, I was asked by the British media this week what I thought, and I said, Jeremy Corbyn's floral orders must be beyond belief. The amount of money he must be spending on wreaths as we speak. He'll be in debt by now.
For it to be the 1979 to 2025 war, do we have to have regime change? I mean, does that mean that the Ayatollah is out?
Well, you know, it's a very interesting thing. This was obviously something that President Trump was considering last week. He has had a very difficult corner to navigate, in my view. His promise that he would prevent the mullahs getting the bomb, and at the same time his promise to his base not to get involved in further Middle Eastern wars, or indeed any foreign wars. This is not an impossible by any means juncture, but it's a difficult one. I think so far he's navigated that well. He's done what he believes he had to do to stop the main plants, Fordow and others. But he's been very careful not to get into the regime change discussion. I happen to think that that's wise for many reasons. But one is that the future of Iran has to be seen to be in the hands of the Iranian people. And personally, I hope very much that the Iranian people seize their country back from the Ayatollahs. But it would be dangerous, to say the least, for Iran to be effectively needing regime change to be installed from outside. I think it would involve this country and this country's allies in a very complicated mission, which we're not up for. And what's more, the Iranian people needs to be their victory if they manage to do that. There should be in the future no myth like there's been about Mossadegh and the Shah, that this was brought in from outside.
So last night, President Trump was looking really good. It seemed like the ceasefire was in place. Then this morning, we get news that Iran violated the ceasefire, Israel violated the ceasefire. You see him saying to the media, they don't know what the F they're doing, which I can't remember a president saying it that explicitly out there. And then some news this afternoon that maybe, at least the first intelligence, that maybe everything wasn't obliterated, that maybe it only delayed them a couple months. How confident are you that this ceasefire can hold and that we did what needed to be done and that this war actually does come to an end?
First of all, I'd be very surprised if the damage was as minimal as that. I don't want to sound like I'm imitating Trump, but he dropped a lot of bombs. A lot of bombs.
Big bombs, too.
Big bombs.
Big.
Maybe the biggest.
Maybe the biggest bombs than you've ever seen before.
You know?
Yeah.
No, I mean, the munitions he dropped on Fordow and elsewhere, I mean, it did not leave much left. There are questions about the removal of fissile materials from some of these sites, but I'd be surprised if it had merely been set back a couple of months. By the way, one of the very interesting things about the squirrely times we're in, maybe we always are in squirrely times, but one of the strangest things about it is that exactly the same people from the left and the right, from all over, who a matter of days ago were claiming that Iran was not seeking a nuclear bomb, are now saying they're mere weeks away from creating it again. I mean, you've got to get your story right somewhere in that.
But do you trust that Iran and Israel now are incentivized to actually stick to this ceasefire?
Well, as I understand it, what happened was that Iran sent another ballistic missile at Israel, and the Israelis were ready to respond. So if somebody shoots you and you say, sorry, but we've got a ceasefire. But I understand the president's desire to say, look, I've intervened, I've done what I needed to do, now stop. Again, this is a difficult corner. My suspicion is that we'll see in the coming weeks exactly what was achieved, and if it were to turn out that the remaining members of the Iranian revolutionary government did decide this was the moment to rush again for a nuclear bomb, I would hope an American president would stop them a second time.